Hello, my name is Dave Juvet. I'm a Senior Vice President here at the Business and Industry Association, and this is BIA's weekly legislative video update. Well, last Thursday, the House and Senate met to take up conference committee reports. A conference committee is formed when there are differing versions of the same bill, a House version and a Senate version. And the purpose of the conference committee is to try and compromise on a version that both chambers can agree to. With the end of the session on Thursday, that pretty much brought the 2021 session to a close. They will return sometime in September to take up gubernatorial vetoes, but for the most part, the activity of the session is over, which makes this a good time to do a quick recap. I think one of the biggest disappointments was the failure of the legislature to pass right to work. This bill passed the Senate, it passed the House Labor Committee, but ultimately it did not have the votes needed to pass on the House floor, and the bill was killed. Right to work means that no individual employee could be forced to join a union or support a union financially through what are called agency fees. 27 states around the country have this. New Hampshire could have been the only state in New England, which would have been a huge economic benefit, but that opportunity was lost. On the good news side, there is some great news for businesses, especially the small business community. The legislature lowered both the business profits tax and the business enterprise tax rates to levels that haven't been seen in more than 20 years. So this is great news for businesses. For the state's smallest businesses, the legislature also raised what's called the filing threshold. This is a dollar amount that needs to be met in order to be required to file a tax return. With both of those thresholds being increased, that means many of the state's smallest businesses won't even have to file a return at all. Certainly good news for them. And one other important piece of tax news, the House and Senate passed Senate Bill 3. This was a bill that exempted revenue from Paycheck Protection Program loans that were forgiven from being taxed under the state's business profits tax. This was an issue identified early in the year by BIA, and we worked closely with House and Senate leadership to get that legislation across the finish line. So all in all, disappointing about right to work, but great news about business taxes. And now let me turn it over to my colleague, David Creer.
Hi, I'm David Creer, Director of Public Policy for BIA. Well, we also had our disappointments in the safe harbor bills. There were 3 bills this year that were introduced that would have provided liability protections for businesses acting in good faith following state and federal workplace health guidelines during the pandemic. These would have prevented anyone from suing that business or enterprise saying they contracted COVID-19 at that business. All 3 bills were re-referred or retained in their respective committees, which means that they're getting put off until next year. This is where BIA is going to continue fighting to try and get these bills passed as soon as possible. However, it wasn't all disappointments. In fact, we had a lot of wins. There was a lot of PFAS bills introduced this year, one of which would have required businesses that are responsible for polluting to connect affected wells to public or private water systems, as well as pay for their water bills for a series of years. The problem with this bill is it had no due process for businesses at all. The Department of Environmental Services was allowed to unilaterally conduct its investigation, assign fault, and then assign a remedy without any input from the business. We fought against this bill, and it was retained in committee in the Senate, and that bill will be coming back next year, where we'll continue to fight against it. Other things in the environment is House Bill 177, which was a ban on building new landfills within 2 miles of a state park. This would have severely limited available capacity of landfills in the state, which would cause your costs for disposing of solid waste to go up, obviously creating extra costs for businesses. We fought against this bill, and it was eventually killed in the Senate by a bipartisan majority. In energy wins, there's a new Department of Energy coming as part of the state budget. Now, while we didn't have a position on whether or not the state should, in fact, create a new Department of Energy, we did work behind the scenes with the governor's staff and legislators to make sure that as part of this Department of Energy, there is a new study committee which will look at the site evaluation committee. This study committee will determine whether or not the site evaluation committee is working as it was originally intended and will make recommendations to improve upon the site evaluation committee for next year. Additionally, there was a bill that would allow community aggregation. Now, this would allow a municipality to pool together their ratepayers and businesses, generally the smaller ones, in order to get better bargaining power to contract for an electricity supply from a competitive supplier. This would allow small businesses to save on their electricity costs. This was our last legislative video update for 2021, but we hope you have a great summer and we'll see you next year.